Hello everyone, and welcome to Kareniya's room. Well, as is obvious by now, I enjoy my fair share of anime from time to time. I've seen some stuff that's made me laugh myself into a headache, has wowed me with incredible visuals and wonderful music, and even gotten this nearly 27-year-old man to weep like my dog had just died. I've only really been into anime since about 2018, though beforehand I watched some typical shows that they would play as a kid, like the original Yu-Gi-Oh! For example, here on Fox Kids in Canada. In my albeit short journey into the world of anime, however, I haven't found too many pieces of media that really just made me feel such strong emotions, akin to how I felt after watching Breaking Bad for the first time. That being said, I definitely can say I have at least a few shows that I've watched that I, for some reason or another, just couldn't give anything less than a 10 out of 10. Today, I want to share with you guys a list of 10 anime that I have given a rating of 10 on sites like MyAnimeList or Anilist, which really are the same thing at the end of the day. However, I would like to make it clear that this is not a top 10, and I'm not scoring what shows are better than the others on this list. It's simply just a list of 10 shows that I feel deserve a top spot. This is out of at least 190 pieces of anime media as of the writing of this video on my MyAnimeList page, and isn't including stuff that I'm currently watching. And I should stress, if I mispronounce these Japanese names, I'm sorry. I'm a big white Canadian guy. Japanese is not a language I know, so I'm sorry. And to reiterate one more time, there will be spoilers for all of these shows, give or take. So if you haven't seen any of these shows and don't want to hear those, simply jump to the next timestamp of this video in the chapters and keep listening from there. With that being said, let's get on with the list. 1. Anohana. Anohana, also called something like The Flower We Saw That Day in English, is a 2011 anime made by A1 Pictures, the same people who are behind stuff like Darling in the Franxx, Kaguya-sama, Your Lie in April, and other sorts of shows. I'll be honest with you, I tried to write anything in this script to describe the story in any justice. However, I'm no writer, and I really can't give you a good synopsis off the top of my head. If you do want a good video to give you a full picture of the anime, however, please check out the video by Mother's Basement on this subject. It's really good, and I will link it in the description below. Essentially, however, the story centers around a reclusive boy named Jinta Yadomi, who awakens one day to see a girl from his childhood named Meiko Hanma, also going by Menma. She appears as a spirit only he can see, owing to the fact that Menma had died years before where the story began, and her death led to the fracturing of Jinta's group of childhood friends, all of which held some form of guilt or unrequited feelings for Menma. Menma pushes Jinta to reunite with his old friends, nicknamed the Super Peacebusters, over the course of this 11-episode coming-of-age drama, which culminates in a beautiful fireworks scene and the expression of heartfelt feelings towards Menma and one another, including Jinta himself, who tended to bottle up his feelings. All of this in an effort to fulfill a wish that Menma had made many years ago. Again, see the Mother's Basement video. I'm not a great storyteller. I will admit, this definitely would fit into the type of story that I've heard described as cry porn, meaning something that's designed mostly to make you feel sad, emotions, or bawl like a baby. But damn it if they aren't right about that, man. I always grew up with that whole boys don't cry idea that was pushed into your head and still kind of is to some extent, and I always believed that crying or feeling strong sadness to fictional media was a bit odd. But I suppose that is also a consequence of me having trouble at times with understanding people and what makes them feel how they do, or what they could relate to this kind of thing. I don't know. I watched all of Anohana and I definitely was a mess. I don't care that if that makes me weak to admit. It's a really bittersweet story, and those are the ones that always seem to get me the most. The feeling of growth, decay, and transformation that comes out of this story, and like a couple others on this list, just stirs up feelings of both, that was beautiful, but also feelings of, that's painful. Jinta and his friends by the end have made up and are moving on with their lives. But you also know that Menma will never get to experience that same feeling. Or as it's made evident at the end, grow up and fall in love. Just thinking about that kind of hurts my heart a little more, even now. And that's why I gave Anohana, the flower we saw that day, a 10. 2. Carole and Tuesday. Now, this 2019 show from Studio Bones might be a bit unusual to put on a 10 out of 10 list, or at least I'd assume, since it's not a show too many people really talk about since it ended, and not one I hear very many people really hyping up as something to go out and watch these days. I think recency bias may have played a part in my love for the show at the beginning, but rewatching it shot that down pretty quickly in my opinion. The anime centers around life on Mars, in which human settlement had begun 50 years before the beginning of the show. A fateful meeting between Carole, a working girl in the city and a street performer with a keyboard, and Tuesday, a girl from a rich family who runs away from home with little but a guitar and a dream to play music somewhere, leads into a 24-episode adventure of making music together and breaking out into a world where AI dominates the music world, with nothing but a guitar, keyboard, and a dream. One of which is fairly enough teased throughout the beginning of each episode with the miracle performance. Sorry if that's a spoiler for you there. And when you see that ending, god damn, it's pretty good. As you might already know, I play music and I have a main YouTube channel dedicated to doing so, albeit my stuff is nothing all that special or even good. Therefore, I was already drawn in because I'm a sucker for music anime, along with stuff like K-On! And Sound Euphonium. And, you know, it's just what I'm about. The art style of the show is honestly really pleasant to look at. There's a lot of colors that just pop out, and I really enjoy the world, even if I'm not usually into kind of sci-fi, futuristic kinds of stuff to begin with. I was at first not expecting the music to be in English, considering I mostly watch subbed anime, and that tends to have only Japanese music. But I don't think that hurts it at all, as the songs were very interesting, and there were a lot of different types of music too, from simple guitar and keyboard ballads from the main cast, to more pop-oriented sounds from characters like Angela and GGK, and even one of the best a cappella songs I've heard in an anime, from the Mermaid Sisters. I seriously recommend looking that one up, it's quite funny. As a musician, I always enjoy these kinds of stories of musicians just hitting it big through a bit of hearsay, good marketing, and elbow grease. Especially when the music is as good as what the singing voices of Carole and Tuesday have done. Seriously, go check out the OPs, 1 and 2, from this show. They are fantastic. So that is why this show gets a 10. And let's move on. 3. Kaguya-sama Love is War Season 3. Also called Ultra Romantic, this is the most recent show on this list as it aired this year in 2022. As it's a rather popular anime and manga series, I don't think I really need to explain what this show is about, but for those who may not know, I'll be brief. Kaguya-sama is a comedy manga series centered around Kaguya Shinomiya, a rich girl of many talents who serves as Shuchin Academy's student council vice president, alongside Miyuki Shirogane, the high-achieving and hard-working student council president. And the two of them are in a competition to get the other to admit defeat, which, in this story, means being the first to confess their feelings of love. This is Season 3 of the anime produced by A1 Pictures, and covers various parts of the manga, including the highly loved Dual Confessions arc, again, we're getting into spoiler territory here, that takes over the second half of the season, and where I think the show takes it into a whole other gear than what we've been used to in Seasons 1 and 2. Kaguya and Miyuki's feelings are finally recognized one night, and a crisscrossing of paths to confess to each other unfolds, especially as the news of Miyuki's early admission into an American university is revealed. A wonderful series of events occurs during the school's cultural festival and after-party, culminating in one of the best final episodes in anime both this year so far, and of anything that I personally have seen in anime up to this point. The meeting of the two on a rooftop, the releasing of hundreds of heart-shaped balloons, and a spectacular kiss, swelling with music that literally had me erupting with happiness. As I was exclusively an anime-only watcher of Kaguya, I wasn't aware of how popular this season would actually be because of said Dual Confessions arc. And I definitely see why. We've been building up to this moment for 3 seasons now, since 2019, I believe, or about 130-ish chapters of the manga, and going in with no knowledge of this made it so much better in my honest opinion. I've since picked up the manga, of course when it was starting to end, and will be keeping myself occupied with it for the next while. I think recency bias may have some role in giving this a 10, but even so, this was still a fantastic climax to a fantastic anime, and I'm excited to getting to finishing the manga. 10 out of 10, I don't care. Go watch Kaguya. It's fantastic. 4. Rascal does not dream of a dreaming girl. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't remember why I gave this one a 10 specifically, other than that it made me cry and the ending was really sweet. That's about it. I'll have to rewatch this one eventually and decide if it'll stay here or not. And it is what it is. I'm sorry. Sorry this one's so brief, but it's hard to explain a movie that I've watched like 2 years ago and I have little memory of. However, I won't leave you guys with a list of 9, so I've made an executive decision and I've added another show that I want to talk about, even if it only scored a 9. However, honestly, it's pretty close to that fantastic range, so it's all good. 4.5, I guess, Gurren Lagann. I'm sure this show doesn't need much introduction if you're a seasoned anime fan, and at the very least, I'm sure you've recognized some of the characters on the poster I just showed you. This is a 2007 anime created by Studio Gainax, a name that you probably would remember as the faces behind Neon Genesis Evangelion. The show centers around our leads Kareniya, Simon, and later on adding Yoko Littner into the mix, as we follow their journeys from their sheltered underground existence, in which mankind is forced to exist by the Spiral King, also known as Lord Genome, into a fantastic mecha-heavy adventure to free mankind from his tyranny and to allow man to live free once again on the surface. Obviously there's much more to it than that, but I don't want to give you too much detail as I think you'll get more enjoyment out of it through your own watch. However, again, spoiler territory ahead. I knew of the show for a long time, especially since around the time it came out initially in 2007 to 2009, because of how much I would see Yoko online for obvious reasons, but I was never an anime fan at the time, so I really didn't know much about it. I only got around to finally watching it back in 2020, and I went in pretty fresh with nothing being spoiled for me. Thank God. I'll tell you what, man. I think I obviously felt in love with Kareniya from the very start as a character. Like, dude was hype, and he had a good head on his shoulders, even if he was a little headstrong. So when episode 8 happened, I felt like I was in disbelief that in the end of the fight, Kareniya just died. A noble sacrifice for sure, but it didn't make it sting any less. Even though by the next episode we do gain a new member of the cast in the form of best girl Nia Teplin, I feel that this was going to be a big role to fill, especially since the two have such wildly different personalities. As for the rest of the show, besides all the interesting and fun cast we meet along the way, I really love this Gainax/Trigger style of the show, and I say Trigger too because the studio was founded by some of that same Gainax staff. Since it's always very expressive, cartoony, and kind of bouncy, to really describe it any well. The mech fights are pretty cool, though mecha admittedly has not been a genre I've really gotten into besides this show and recently with the new show 86. And while I think the show's pace slows a bit during the time skip at the beginning, the action nonetheless is still engaging as ever, and the ending of the show too was just fantastic, both visually and as a nice climax to our story. Also, that scene with episode 26 with Simon and Kareniya's apparition, I'm choked up just thinking about it, man. I seriously, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to spoil you. As it stands, I have it at a 9 out of 10, so not quite on the scale that these other shows are at. However, I do think it would deserve a 10 as well. With that being said, let's keep going. 5. Liz and the Bluebird. This 2018 spin-off movie from the Sound Euphonium series produced by Kyoto Animation was a treat, and was fairly different than what the parent story has to offer. The movie is a crisscrossing of stories that are also one and the same. A story about Liz, an imaginary girl who's a more gentle kind of soul, and the Bluebird, a more animated and excitable kind of girl, who share parallels with Katoji High School students Mizore Yorezuka and Nozomi Kasaki respectively in our world. They share the same pains of confidence, uncertainty, and the complicated feelings the two girls go through in their efforts to connect with one another, to improve for their upcoming performance of the titular story, Liz and the Bluebird, in concert. Again, like with our previous entry of Rascal Does Not Dream of a Dreaming Girl, it has been a while since I've watched this one, and I even purchased the DVD to re-watch it sometime to make sure of my feelings on this film. However, I still vividly remember how different things were, especially in the choice of art style used in the film. A lot more simpler colors, proportionality was a bit different, to say the least, and the watercolor painting feeling of the Liz and Bluebird segments were actually pretty good, as was the music from the series as usual. I was in a band, so I always had some sort of appreciation for this series when I watched it, and I know how well and truly stressful it can be sometimes to struggle before a big performance, though I can't say I ever had a talking blue anime girl to talk to when I needed them most. Maybe that would have helped, who knows. Anyway, I don't really have much to say anymore with this. I gave it a 10, and I'm gonna go rewatch it again sometime to see how well it holds up. I'm sure it will hold up, because it's Kyoto Animation and their stuff is fantastic. Anyway, on to the next one of the list. 6. A Place Further Than the Universe. This 2018 anime from Madhouse is a fantastic show, revolving around the coming together of a group of girls of various upbringings and their story to an adventure to Antarctica. Spurred on one day by a chance encounter between Mari Tamaki, an energetic girl who dreams to do something grand before her youth and high school time is over, and Shirase Kabuchizawa, a girl with a desire to go to Antarctica to find her mother, who went missing in the icy continent some years prior. The two put their heads together and plan to fund their fledgling journey however that may come about. Picking up Hinata Miyake, a school dropout wishing for adventure, and Yuzuki Shiraishi, a young actress destined for Antarctica already, the four begin a budding friendship, through good times and bad, emotional immaturity, and grief. Spoilers, obviously. But with the mother of Shirase, named Takako, being gone for some time in Antarctica on her own, it's safe to assume that she died in the very blizzard that she had been lost in that very night. Nonetheless, the hope the show tries to uphold in the beginning makes you think, maybe there's a chance. Well, once episode 12 comes around, that thought comes back around to punch you in the gut in the most painful way. With the discovery of a laptop possessed by Takako, and the reveal that none of the many emails that Shirase had sent had been touched by Takako, the realization of death is obvious but still very painful. That particular scene, it's rough, even now, to watch. While again, like with Anohana, that we got a more bittersweet ending, what we did get was much more impactful and important for Shirase's growth than any Deus Ex Machina with the mom just suddenly being alive would have been, and that's alright with me at the end of the day. I've seen this show a few times, and it never really loses that impact that first watch gave me, and for that reason, it remains strongly at a 10 for me. 7. To Your Eternity. As I mentioned in my previous video, I had put this video in this list, so let's talk into a little bit more detail about To Your Eternity. This one I initially thought might just be another case of recency bias, but honestly I think those feelings were unfounded. This 2021 anime from Brainsbase centers around an immortal creation from a mysterious black-cloaked overseer figure, doubling as the story's narrator, provided by the lovely Kenjiro Tsuda in Japanese, who created the being to help protect the world from destruction of any kind. It is able to take the form of whatever it comes in contact with, and after some time passes, it eventually gains the body of a wounded wolf that dies in the winter snow. The story really begins, however, when it meets up with a boy who is wounded and dying, looking for the people who had abandoned the village he lives in. Dying on a bitter cold night, it takes the boy's form, and now begins its journey into the world in this form. In the 20 episodes of this anime, the being is eventually given the name Fushi by a young girl named March. The series had a fantastic beginning episode, and I was so excited to watch more. But this anime actually aired sometime around when there was a big internet outage nationwide in Canada back in April of 2021, and I was basically out of commission for some time. Go figure, it happened again in July of this year. Gotta love those Canadian oligopolies, eh? Anyway, I did eventually catch up on the show once it had finished airing, and I binged all of it. All of it in one night. The changing of new locations and the introductions of new people got worse over time, if only for the simple reason that it meant that Fushi kept the tragic keepsake from each of his journeys. Spoilers again, obviously, but Fushi would begin to take more forms on as the result of loss of many people he meets along the way, like March, the young girl who I mentioned before gave Fushi his name, as well as Gugu, a tragic figure with a disfigured face, who became sort of a friend or a brother figure to Fushi, and Parona, a young woman who acted as a mother or older sister surrogate to March, who accompanied Fushi on his journey and had later died as a result. The whole anime was a roller coaster of calm moments of Fushi living a normal life, normal-ish life, between scenes of intense action and painful loss of aforementioned characters, and I'm extremely happy that Season 2 is not too far away as of the writing of this video. 10 out of 10, I recommend this one wholesale. If you're going to watch anything from this list, I would say this one in particular. Anyway, on to the next show. 8. A Silent Voice. This is a pretty popular movie, so I don't think it would be much of a surprise for it to be on this list. Released in 2018 by Kyoto Animation, this is based on a manga written, funny enough, by the same person who wrote the manga for To Your Eternity. Fun stuff. A Silent Voice centers around Shoya Ishida, who as a young boy was a rowdy kid who hated being bored and always sought to do anything to beat it, no matter how mundane or vicious the act may be. One of these more vicious ways was related to Shoko Nishimiya, a young deaf girl who was bullied for her ailment. Shoya would eventually be treated like a pariah when Shoko was transferred due to the harsh bullying, and him given the blame not entirely unfairly, though unfairly as it was also the entire class doing it. Later in his high school years, he meets up with and kindles a budding friendship with Shoko, though not without his thoughts beating him over the head for his past cruelty to the poor girl like a man with a stick. What transpires is a story of healing, trauma, and the desire that even many of us have to make amends for past mistakes or awful wrongdoings. The movie was talked up to me for a long time before I ever did watch it, and I can see why. Kyoto Animation really brought the manga, which I personally wasn't as interested in, to life. The subject matter around bullying does hit me particularly, as I was no stranger to it myself, though obviously I couldn't begin to imagine how it would be for someone who's like Shoko, a girl with a disability that's bullied because she's not like everyone else, or that they find her weird, or that they're trying to get attention for some reason. That shit's especially hard to watch because of that kind of behavior. The movie also has a great dynamic of characters who show the different sides of the story, with Shoya an example of those who they feel have done wrong, and they actually want to seek amends for anything wrong they've done, and those similar to Naoko Ueno, a girl who also used to bully Shoko, who continues to hold detestment for her, especially as we do learn that Naoko shares feelings for Shoya, who in turn is spending a lot of time now with Shoko. The more things change, the more they stay the same. This is another movie I definitely say earns a 10 out of 10, and I plan on rewatching this one as well pretty soon. Also, on my first watch, I was really surprised when I heard that the opening song of this movie was The Who's My Generation. Cool stuff. Anyway, on with the next one. 9. Violet Evergarden Movie. This is the 2020 film that I had to wait literally a goddamn age to watch. Kyoto Animation came back at it with another installment of one of my favorite series, and they hit hard with the Violet Evergarden Movie. I only got around to seeing it in January of this year, of 2022, when they finally put it on Netflix, because I ain't no pirate. The story takes place sometime after the anime, and tells the continuation of Violet's desire to understand what "I love you" means, and her life continuing to write letters even as her line of work is in decline following the end of the war. Through some twist of fate, her long sought-after mentor/father figure, in a sense, Major Gilbert Bougainvillea, who was believed to have died in the war that the series had been based around, had been rumored to be alive somewhere. In between her letter writing, she begins her journey to a remote corner of the world in search of the Major. She's ecstatic to discover that he indeed is alive, but their desired meeting is not to be until the end of the film, which was a very beautiful scene, and damn does this series make me super emotional, man. I'm kinda sparse in details since it's been roughly 7 or 8 months since I've seen it, but the reunion between Violet and Major Gilbert is what you desire most, or the hope of it anyway if you weren't already spoiled on that little nugget, though that was sort of my fault. Regardless, I think it's better for a viewing experience if I don't really tell you everything about it. It's a really good movie, visually stunning, and man, Violet Evergarden is a really good way to give you that cathartic cry you really need those days. I can't recommend it enough if you're a fan of the series, and if you haven't watched Violet Evergarden yet, well, sorry for spoiling you, but also go watch it right now. This is an order from me. Go watch it! And finally, number 10, Your Lie in April. So, to end the list, we have Your Lie in April. This 2014 anime, produced by A1 Pictures, appealed to me once again because of music, and also because there was a lot of buzz around it, though some reviews were also mixed. Nevertheless, I gave it a watch, and it's why it's in this video. In the show, a child piano prodigy named Kosei Arima is shaken by the death of his mother, and not being able to hear a piano, I mean, he literally can't, he gives up his piano playing days and decides to live a normal life, though with those negative emotions over his mother's death swirling ever so often in his head. His world would flip one day, when an energetic blonde-haired girl made her appearance by the name of Kaori Miyazono. A violin player, Kaori lights a spark in Kosei to try the piano one more time, with her as a duet partner, and things develop well. But a dark secret is hanging over the air, following a duet performance as Kaori passes out after the performance. It's made noticeable to the audience, us, that her cheery appearance is really just a facade, and that Kaori is actually really not well. As the series goes on, she shows up less to school, is seen gaunt, and even has many medications that she seemingly is taking. By the end of it, it's clear she's dying, and her health is taking a rapid deterioration, and it's really rough to watch. Kaori eventually goes for the opportunity for a risky surgery on the same day Kosei is to perform, and it's revealed through this beautiful visual sequence that Kaori had actually died during the surgery. That's a pretty basic rundown of the main plot of the story, honestly. We meet some other characters along the way, some classmates, friends of Kosei's family, and people he played against in competitions. However, it's that main dynamic that really trumps all in my opinion. I will say though that the attempts at comedy in the later bits of the show are a bit clunky and out of place, but I suppose it's there to cut at least some of the tension. Though considering that the tension by the end is the possible, well, predictable, death of Kaori, I don't know how successful that would be. That being said, overall this to me was a wonderful anime, but damn did my heart hurt in that last stretch of episodes. The Shroud of Death was just clinging in the air, the desperation to avoid it, and that final punch in the gut in the last episode. Did you ever wonder why the show was called Your Lie in April? Well, I won't spoil it for you. I think it's better you watch it yourselves. I would recommend this show for sure. 10 out of 10. I need a beer. Oh my god. And that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. This is my first time putting together a scripted video, so hopefully it's not too awful. I felt as I was starting to get this idea for a video in my mind, if I didn't write a script, I'd be talking out my ass and rambling for an hour, so hopefully it doesn't get that long. Right? Before I go, I would also like to use this time to do a few honorable mentions, which, much like Gurren Lagann, were shows, OVAs, movies, etc. that I enjoyed a ton, but that didn't quite get the 10 out of 10 spot on the list. As the video is already long, I won't get into very much detail, but here we go nonetheless. First, let's talk about Mushoku Tensei, also known as Jobless Reincarnation in English. Another more recent show in terms of the anime anyway, that came out in 2021. There were web and light novels out much earlier than this in the early 2010s. So far, it's an enjoyable isekai series about a 30-year-old NEET given a second chance in life to change and grow and be a better person than he was in his past life, while being reborn into the new world, literally, while keeping his old adult mind. Of course, this anime has a fair bit of controversy over aspects of the source material that make it a hard show to recommend to your average Joe. One being the aforementioned adult mind in a boy's body, leading to more, so to say, uncomfortable moments with the younger cast of the show, like Best Girl Eris Greyrat and Sylphiette. But with that being said, it still is a show with a wonderful world, cast of characters, and even if our protagonist is a bit morally ambiguous at best, I am excited to see how far this story goes, especially since, as of the writing of this video, a second season is due to be released sometime next year in 2023. Very cool. Next, for another change of pace, I'd like to talk just a little bit about Asobi Asobase, also called Workshop of Fun in English, at least according to Crunchyroll. This show is a lot more simple in premise, as it's a slice-of-life comedy about 3 middle school girls who run a club called the Pastimers Club, which, as the name suggests, is a club about just passing time, in whatever way works. From simple things like kids' games to all sorts of absurdist over-the-top games, that I think would be better to watch than for me to explain, because explaining a joke makes it worse. If you know anything about Nichijou, I would say this show takes the absurd humor of that show and combines it with a bit more chaos, slapstick, and some very delightful and frightening art style choices. Barrel of laughs, please check this one out, please. And finally, K-On! I won't say much more than that. I'm sure you know what K-On! Is. Cute girls in a band doing slice-of-life things, and it's fun, and it's cute, and come on, you know what K-On! Is, and if you don't, go watch it. That's all I'm gonna say. Last, I'll just post a list of names of some other shows I'd like to recommend. All these shows vary in score, but nonetheless I liked them, and this video's too long already, so pause if you want to see all the shows on the list. See it? Got it? Good. Anyway, that's it for me. My name is Kareniya, and do remember, you are always welcome in Kareniya's room. Ciao!